All right, I think we're live.
Hello, yes. Just checking. Yes, we are live.
Awesome. Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Data Track Interview Prep Guidelines. My name is Sundas, and I will be co-presenting with Samia Khalid today.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. And I think we can just wait like 1-2 more minutes to let people join in.
Okay.
I think we can get started in 1 minute. At 35, we can just kick it off.
All right, let's get started. Thank you, everybody, for joining Data Track Interview Prep Guidelines today. I am so excited to be presenting today with Samia. Samia, do you want to do a quick intro? And then before we do a detailed one?
Yes, everyone, welcome to the Data Track Interview Prep Guidelines. This is Samia. It's so great to be here with you and tell you all about data preparation. So I think we'll get to the more detailed introductions later, and let's just start with the intro to the agenda.
Awesome. So the agenda for today is that we will do introductions of ourselves, and then we'll dive right into the data track interview prep guidelines. Samia will talk about career pathways in data. I will walk you through a data science interview framework and some sample questions, and then we'll end the session with learning resources. We want to make sure that we leave a lot of time for you to ask us questions. So please ask questions during the session, leave them on the Facebook comment section. And also, if you can introduce yourself in the Facebook comments, where you're from, and if you're a coffee or a tea person. I'm definitely a coffee person. I do like tea sometimes, but definitely a coffee person. Awesome. So,
I'm both.
How about you, Samia?
I'm both. I'm also I'm not the matcha person as well.
What do you drink the first thing in the morning? Is it coffee or tea?
Tea. So I'm like tea, coffee, whatever is available. Okay. The easiest option to start.
You are definitely a tea person then.
If coffee is available when in office, I don't have to make it at home. So otherwise coffee. Yeah. All right, let's go ahead.
Awesome. So my name is Sundas Khalid, and I am a senior analytical lead at Google. Previously, I was at Amazon working as a data scientist, and I'm really, really excited to talk about the data track today because I have experienced a few roles within the data track. I have a 6-year gap between my high school and my college, and I'm actually the first female in my family to graduate university and pursue a career, which I'm really, really proud of, something personally. I graduated from University of Washington in 2014. I was the class valedictorian where I gave a speech in front of 3,000 students and graduation class. I live in Seattle, Washington with my husband and 2 kids. I do a lot of things on the side. One of them is that I do career coaching services where I provide resume and interview prep guidelines. So today's talk is right up in my alley, and I'm really excited to be part of it. Outside of that, I am involved in several diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. I am one of the leads for DE&I initiatives at Google for my organization. I serve on the board for Pakistani Women in Computing as a vice chair. And I'm really, really passionate about this whole community. If you're new to the community, you will soon find that this is like one of the best communities out there. I've been involved in this community for about two years now, and I just love the people in it. Everybody is super awesome, and they're super down to earth and really easy to talk to and approach. And that's what I love about this community. I also serve on the board of North Seattle College on the President's Advisory Board. I'm also facilitator for I Am Remarkable workshop, and I host workshop at Google and outside. If you have not heard of I Am Remarkable workshop, I highly recommend you to check it out. And if you're interested in getting in touch with me, I am pretty much present on various social medias. I do a lot of data science blogs on Medium and on Instagram. So feel free to connect with me after today's session, and I'll be happy to chat with you.
Yes, I'm Samia. I'm a senior applied scientist and engineer at Microsoft, where right now I'm working on creating intelligent experiences for Outlook and Office 365 in particular. And I did my master's from Sweden, and I hold a patent for my master thesis work on predictive maintenance. So that was quite a shift from software. I was working with heavy vehicles, and that's where really my passion for AI started. Outside my regular day-to-day job, I love working on initiatives that help me to empower and inspire others. I'm part of this amazing community, PWIC, and I'm the lead for the Seattle chapter. And besides PWIC, I'm also the lead for the Microsoft Learn Student Ambassadors program. We're right now working very closely with the Islamabad team as their lead. And if you don't know it, that's a community that to empower students to learn and grow together, especially based on learning all about the Microsoft technologies. And then also I am a huge believer in continuous learning and then sharing what I learned. So that's why I thought, why not have my own AI blog as well? So I like to share content, AI content in a simplified manner. So you can check out my blog towardsml.com. And then I'm doing regular talks as well, and I authored a data science course as well, because I really believe that there was a gap where people are getting afraid of all the content out there, things that are explained in a complicated manner, and I wanted to simplify it and make the accelerated learning. And besides all the work and techie stuff, I love being involved in like fitness and doing adventures and just living and going around the world. And I'm happy to connect with you on social media. You can find me maybe on LinkedIn, Instagram, follow me on my blog. So with that said, let's get started and talk about today's session, why we are here and why we want to. But today's session is all about interview guidelines, right, for the data track. But before we go into preparing for the interview, one thing that I would like to start talking about before Sundas does the deep dive into the interview questions is really understanding what are you going for? What are these data paths? Because people are confused that when we talk about careers in data, right now we have this track that says data, right? But there are various kinds of roles that you have: a data analyst, you have a data scientist, you have applied scientists, you have researchers. So what is really the difference, and what are we really talking about? And this can be really confusing for candidates, especially if you're new in the field. And given that this is a new field, even sometimes the job descriptions and the companies themselves, especially startups, don't have the clarity on the various roles. So starting from scratch, when we're talking about an AI project, right? Let's take an example of something that you use every day. For example, when you are composing emails, right? Let's say you are on Gmail. I assume everyone uses that, and you're writing email and you get the auto completed, right? So that's powered by AI. Now, there is data science there in itself, and creating models is a small part of it, right? There is the whole life cycle of the AI project that is needed before you get to see that autocomplete feature. And what does it take to have something like that infused in a real product? So we start with, there are various components. So as here, they're listed 6 of them, the high level components. So there is data engineering, there is modeling, then there is deploying of the models, then there is business analysis, and then doing the whole infrastructure work and research. We'll go into the deep dive of all of these, but what this means is that think of the app, right? The Smart Compose, or any other app, for example, YouTube as well. So those are things that are being used by millions of people daily, right? So we are talking about a huge scale. So it's not about just learning, let's say, how to develop a model, let's say your regression model or your CNNs or RNNs or whichever AI model you're talking about, just training it and then writing code in your Jupyter notebook and you're done. No, right? You have a code and set up the whole pipeline. So end-to-end pipeline has many different roles. So that's where we need more than a data scientist. So there is a traditional software engineer, there's a machine learning engineer, a data analyst, data scientist, applied scientist, and machine learning researcher. Now, these tasks, it's not like only the data scientist would do all of this. So in green, as you can see in this table, are the primary tasks. For example, for a software engineer, the primary task would be working, let's say all of these people are working together on an end-to-end AI project. The software engineer would be doing the whole core engineering work. That would be data engineering and the infrastructure work, the huge scale, like setting up those distributed systems, right? Making sure it's low latency, it's reliable, there is fault tolerance and all that stuff that comes with creating software systems at scale. On the other hand, a machine learning engineer would be a step unlike a traditional software engineer, the machine learning engineer would know about the machine learning models as well, how to deploy those models. For example, let's say that you have a model that does predict something. Let's say in this case of Smart Compose that we're taking as an example, it predicts what to write, right? Once you have trained that model, how do you deploy it in actual service? How do you make it part of the app? So you have to take the model and deploy it, right? So that's where the machine learning engineer would come into play and deploy the trained model. And then they would also do infrastructure work, but lesser than a traditional software engineer. So working on the distributed systems at scale. And then before I would like to move to the applied scientist first. Applied scientist would be someone that is someone in between a machine learning engineer and a data scientist. So the applied scientist would be able to do all the infrastructure work, would know about the machine learning models as well, but would be more on the side of, would be more heavy on data scientist than on software engineering skills. So let's say if you put software engineering here on the left and data science on the right, so the applied scientist would be more towards data scientist than software engineering, whereas the machine learning engineer would be on that scale more towards software engineering than data science. And then the data scientist would be mainly focusing on, let's say, feature engineering, the whole data engineering pipeline, training the models, but they won't be working on the model development or the infrastructure work, right? They wouldn't be like thinking about, hey, I have trained this model that predicts what should be the Smart Compose should predict, but they wouldn't be thinking about, hey, how do I scale it, or how do I deploy it? How do I bring this in front of the users via the product? So that's where the other people come into play to help the data scientists on the models they have trained. Now, a data analyst, on the other hand, also wouldn't take care of the modeling and deployment part. So if you have a data science analyst in the loop, they would be taking care of mostly of the business analysis of things. Let's say if you have deployed it, bringing any AI-powered product in front of the user, what is the impact on the user? Or if you want to do A/B testing or really understand the business impact of the model, that's where they would do business analysis, but they wouldn't be taking care of modeling and deployment and all of that stuff. And then you have the machine learning researcher who don't focus about all the software engineering pieces that come into the AI project, but they would be focused on developing new models, understanding that, hey, we have the Smart Compose model. What would be the cutting edge new models? Like always invested in research and looking at how to improve the state of the art. So it's, yeah, as the name says, it's a very heavy on research work and lesser on the coding and all the rest of the part. Now, this kind of distinction where you have all these people is something that you would see if you are going to apply in a big company like Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Facebook. All of these would have all these roles. Now, please be aware that if you're applying for a startup, then sometimes startups are looking for one person who does it all, right? A generalist who would be able to do data science. They can do software engineering part as well. They'll take care of deployment and everything end to end, right? So please read the specifications, like the job requirements. Like what are they looking for? Are they looking for exactly a data scientists who do the core work of, like, let's say, understanding the features and then training the model? Or are they looking also for a data engineer or machine learning engineer as well? For example, if they're asking you to deploy and think about how to bring that model, incorporate it into the product, then they're looking for the engineering role as well. And based on what they're looking, there are different skill set that needs to be covered. So again, please look at the job requirements to understand which of these tasks they are looking for. And then you can take it from there, because this is such a new field. These are new jobs. Like, so people don't have the clarity. And sometimes they ask for, let's say, data scientist that covers, or they would say machine learning engineer in general, and not have all the various categories. And also note that the machine learning researcher, or these are usually people who hold PhDs, and you wouldn't see this role, especially in startups. So this is the luxury that the big companies have, to have hire people who can just be focused on developing the state-of-the-art models. Now, I want to quickly go into the skills and the tools that are required. So I'm not going to go per role, because as I said, that can vary based on company to company, and sometimes they mix and match and call one for the other. So I'll talk about per task. So that you can understand, based on the task that they are asking you to do, what kind of skills and tools you will be needing. For example, when we talk about data engineering, right, there you'd need some coding and software engineering skill, and how much of coding is needed, or exactly which skills, that will vary on the scale. So of course, I hope you understand that if you're developing an app with some AI infused, that would be like for, let's say, a startup, and you have hardly any users, the scale would be very different. So you might be able to just do with SQL or object-oriented programming, and like Python, C#, and Java. However, if you're working on a huge scale, then you have to know about big data tools like Spark as well. Now, the second part is modeling, right? This is where that's the task where you need to know more about the maths and the data science and the machine learning skills as well. So this is where you would be working with developing models in Python, TensorFlow, or PyTorch. So all of these would apply. And especially like TensorFlow, PyTorch, for example, for deep learning models are being used both depending on the company. For example, PyTorch is very common with researchers and academia, while TensorFlow is more in companies that use the Google stack. So, but if someone is looking for the deployment, for people, if in the jobs requirements they're saying that you would be working on deployment as well, then it means that they'll be looking for strong coding and backend engineering skills as well, because you would be writing production code, right? You have to bring that model, infuse it into the actual product, and people will be using it. So it has to be robust and scalable. So that's why you'd be using traditional programming languages, where you have Python, C#, Java, depending on the stack that company has. And then you would be working with cloud technologies as well. That could be Azure, Google Cloud, or AWS. If they're looking for business analysis task, someone who would do business analysis, that's where it's usually the task that this is heavy on either a data scientist or a business or a data analyst role would be for this. And this is where you have to really understand the business, right? So business acumen is really important, because you have to understand your audience, your customers. So it's not just the machine learning or data science skills. So you need also strong communication and how to present what you have, your findings, to the audience, which could be your managers or your team. So it has to the stakeholders, right? So this is where that part comes into play. And the tools for business analysis, you don't necessarily need to be heavy on the coding part. It's, for example, a data analyst doesn't necessarily need to know coding. They could get away with Excel, PowerPoints, Power BI, and A/B testing software. But again, depending on the company, they might need some programming languages skills as well. For example, Python, as you would see the trend in the data track, Python is the one common factor. So if it's really good to know your Python anyways, independently of which role you are going for. It's a really great skill to have and a tool that you'd be using anyways. So again, this is really develop your business skills and presentation and communication skills. So this is why I was saying that really look at what the company is really looking for, and then take, instead of going for the job titles, understand their requirements. Now, the core AI infrastructure work, this is where it would usually be like companies, if you apply for Microsoft, Google, Facebooks, and so on, the big tech, but also the strong software engineering skills would be required, especially if you have to develop systems at a huge scale. And you would be using object-oriented programming languages, or again, the cloud-based tech. But of course, this would come also like for startups as well, if they're looking for the person who would do the infrastructure work as well, but they might just look at the job requirements to understand what they need. And do ask clarifying questions as well, because if they're saying the data scientist who would do these things as well, then you can based on the description, you can understand you need to practice and like really develop strong coding and engineering skills or not. Then research is, of course, this is where I don't need to tell like kind of the skills required for research. If you're a PhD, you know what you are getting into. So it's like very strong analytical and critical thinking skills, and of course, lots and lots of persistence and focus to do your work. And then it's academic publications and whatnot. So I'm not going to go into the details of the tools required for research. So if you are into research, I think you can know what I'm talking about. But this is usually reserved for PhDs. So they wouldn't really hire, they would hire people who have finished their masters but who want to pursue PhD, but it's usually reserved for either you are doing a postdoc or you're doing your, let's say, internships for your PhDs. So yeah, that was really the skills and tools based on the different roles, because it's really, the roles can be very generic. Companies really say, okay, they're looking for one role, but they are asking you, let's say they're looking for a data scientist and asking you infra work, or they might be looking, let's say, for a software engineer or anything else and looking for, or let's say if they're data analyst and saying, hey, you should be working on model deployment and modeling as well, then they're really looking for a data scientist. So try to read more the requirements to understand what is needed, rather than just sticking with the role, with the title, and ask clarifying questions. And if you want to really go into more details of this, I have like a very detailed blog post. So if you go on towardsml.com, the latest post goes into actually the specific of the roles and much more. So I hope this gives you a better understanding of the data jobs and what you do and skills that are needed when you are working on a complete end-to-end project, rather than what students usually have this mindset. They think that, hey, you just have the Jupyter notebook, you get the data, you develop the model, and that's data science and that's AI and that's done. No, like in the real world, there is a lot more than meets the eye. The modeling part is really tiny, and there's the huge lots of like infra work and many other moving pieces that need to be in place before you actually see those awesome AI-powered experiences. And with that said, I'll hand it over to Sundas to do a deep dive on the data scientist interview in particular.
Awesome. Samia, thank you so much for going into very thorough introduction of each job family within the data science. The purpose for us for doing that, I think it was two parts. One is that data science, like when somebody hears the word data science, they think of just like one dimension, but there are so many job families under the data science umbrella that it's very, very important to understand that. And I really like your point on understanding the title, but also understanding the task. Like I can tell you from experience that a data scientist, for example, at Facebook, does not equate to a data scientist at Amazon. So definitely pay attention to a lot on the requirement part. So as Samia mentioned, that there are so many job families under the data science bucket. So what we're going to do for the deep dive purposes, we are going to focus on data science generalist job family. So what I did for this slide, I basically I just Googled Amazon data scientist job family, open jobs. And this is what you see on the key responsibility for a data scientist entry-level role. So here you're seeing that some of the key responsibilities include implementing statistical methods to solve specific business problems, utilize code, Python, R, Scala, improve upon existing methodologies, directly contributing to the design and development of automated forecasting, build customer-facing reported tools, collaborate with research, presenting critical data in format that is immediately useful. So previously, from what Samia walked us through, it seems like this is more of like a generalist rule because they're asking for pretty much everything, everything from different buckets. But if I were to like frame it into one section, that would be like a data science generalist. They know how to do like data analysis work. They also know how to do like modeling work, and they're also really good communicator, and they can communicate with the business as well as with the technical team, the software developers, and the development team as well. So I think like this job description really ties very nicely into what Samia presented previously in terms of all the tasks and the job families that are present there. So what I'm going to do for the next part, I'm going to walk you through an interview framework. Before I do that, I want to just put a disclaimer that this framework is very general framework. I'm not giving you this framework saying that this is how Amazon interviews, or this is how Google interviews, or this is how Microsoft interviews. This is a typical interview framework that is more generic, and it should be used industry-wide. So this is for a data science generalist. So let's talk about the concepts for a data science generalist. So as you can kind of observe from the job requirement and key responsibilities, you can tell there are three main themes that come forward. One is the analytics, problem solving, and that part basically checks your business and product understanding and your sense of that. The second part is the statistics. And within the statistics bucket, you're basically being tested for like how much you know about the statistics. Can you apply stats to actual business problems and get a solution out of it? And then we go one step further, which is the machine learning concepts, like how familiar are you with machine learning? Now, remember that data scientist generalist is not a machine learning scientist. So they are supposed to know at the high level of how machine learning works. What are the different models there are? So if they're given a business problem, they know how to pick up on one of the existing, let's say linear regression, logistic regression. They are able to pick up any of the models that are available in ML, and they are able to apply it to that problem and solve it. So I hope that part is clear. If you have any questions, like feel free to post them in the comments section. I already see there are a lot of great questions, and we will take time at the end to answer those. So just keep moving. Then we're talking about the languages. So what will happen in the interview? Most of the companies would give you option what you want to interview in. Do you want to interview in SQL? Do you want to interview in Python? Do you want to interview in R? So I would say SQL is a must, regardless of which data role you are part of. And Python and R are considered the scripting languages. So for some companies, for example, for Amazon, knowing SQL is great, but just knowing SQL alone is not going to get you to a data science job offer. You need to know scripting languages such as Python and R, so you're able to manipulate data and build models using these languages. All right, I hope that is clear. If any questions on the languages part, these are the three major languages that are used by the data science job family, specifically for the data scientist generalist role. And then there are other languages that some companies prefer. So again, like look at the job requirement, the key responsibilities. Most of the times it will be mentioned in the job description what kind of person they're looking for with what kind of languages are of their preference. So SQL is a default. You definitely must know SQL, and then you can go one step further, which you're supposed to go for the data science generalist role and know Python or R. So let's talk about the interview rounds. This one, the interview rounds is very, I think most of the companies follow a generic interview process. It's actually the content within those interviews that what kind of questions they ask you for. So for a data science, the interviews that I have done, this is how the interviews are framed. So first is always the phone screen, the technical screen. So that is normally typically 30 to 45 minutes or 1 hour. And in that phone screen, what the interviewer is trying to figure out is if you are a good fit for the role. They will ask you like some high level questions about you, like typical question, tell me about yourself. And then they will like look at your resume, and then they'll ask you some related question from your resume. And then they will immediately jump into the coding part of it, because a lot of the big tech companies specifically hire on functional skills. So they put higher emphasis on the technical skills as well. So the typical interviews would be, you would like, let's say if it's a 45-minute interview for the phone screen, they will spend about like 40 minutes asking you high level questions about yourself, but they will immediately jump into the coding part. And they will either use, since everything is online now, so I used to use Collab Edit. Is it that what it's called, Samia? Collab Edit or something like that?
Google Collab.
Yeah. So basically, I will give you questions, and then I'll say, okay, can you tell me how to solve this and write code for me? And then I'll copy paste the code, and then I'll put it in my feedback. So whatever code you write is going to go into the review, and the interview committee is going to actually, hiring committee is actually going to look at it, and basically based on the interviewer's feedback, you will move forward to on-site or you will not move forward. So phone screen is definitely a first step to basically nail. The last, most of the time, the second and the last part is the on-site. And the on-site is typically 4 to 5 interview rounds, and each interview rounds are typically 45 minutes. So what the company will do, typically they will schedule the morning or the afternoon. And so let's say from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m., they will schedule like 45 minutes consecutive slots. And if this is in person, you will go sit in a room and one person will come after another and they will start asking questions. Now that this is online, you would likely get like different email links or Zoom links or calendar invites for different time slots for different interviewers. So from these 4 to 5 rounds that you would get on site, it would be a mix of everything. It would be a mix of the 3 concepts that I mentioned. You can, like a general rule is that you can consider that 50% of these 4 to 5 interviews are going to be asking you coding questions, where they will give you a coding problem and they will like ask you to solve it. So just be prepared for that. I will, like in the next part, I will quickly walk you through some sample questions. This is right now too tiny on my screen, but I'll try to read it. So these are some sample questions that I have listed for under each concept. So a typical opening question would be, regardless of, I think it doesn't just apply to data, but pretty much any job family, is tell me about a data science project that you are proud of. And this is like one of the easiest questions to nail, but you will be surprised how many people get it wrong. And when I'm asking you this, I'm actually asking you to like show off what you have to offer. Like, this is your time to shine. Make sure you have a really good project prepared for it and a really good answer prepared for it. And then I'll like section my interviews into different buckets. I will have questions for the analytics section, where I'm trying to check like how you think. Are you analytical person? If you're put in a business, or if you're talking to a business person, are you able to take that business problem and turn it into a data science problem? That's what basically I'm trying to understand, like when I'm checking for the analytics concept. So an example of an interview question here could be, let's say you're interviewing for Uber and I'm asking you, I am a PM for Uber Eats and I'm launching a new restaurant type offering, Seattle region. How do I find the incremental lift of this change? Now, this is a very open-ended question and it's meant to be like that. The one thing to remember here is that if somebody asks you this question, do not jump into the problem. You need to ask questions back to understand and get to the bottom of what they are actually trying to do. And that's what they want to check, because when you become part of the company, when you are working as a data scientist, you will get a lot of these questions from like product managers or whoever you're working with. And they will come to you, they're like, oh, things are not working. Like, you're not going to jump into the solution right away, right? You're going to try to understand like what things are not working. When you say like website is not doing good, like what do you mean that website is not doing? What are you actually trying to do? And then you ask questions, and then you get to the bottom of it. For example, if I ask questions on this one, let's say I'm a PM for Uber Eats and I'm launching a new restaurant type offering, I'll ask questions like, okay, but is it a new offering in that city? Do we already have some data from different cities? So just like trying to understand like what information is available and why are we trying to launch here now, and what do we want to get out of it? Like, what is our metric that we're trying to optimize for? The next part I will jump into is the statistics, and a very simple question. So a lot of these questions are very intro level, so I didn't do very complicated ones. This is just to give you a flavor of what to expect in a data science interview. So for statistics, I can simply give you a data set, and I can ask you like, when should we remove outlier from this data set? Like, can you explain the methods that you will use to remove outliers from this? And similarly, machine learning, I will start at very high level questions, just trying to understand like how much do you actually know. For example, the first question where I'll ask you, explain supervised and unsupervised learning. When would you apply one over the other? These are just like concept checks, and I'll see like how you perform on these. And if I see, I can tell from your answer like how much you know or how much you don't know. And if I wanna, I will ask follow-up questions and deep dive further to try to gauge like how much do you actually know. So this is not like one question. A lot of these questions will have like 2 or 3 follow-up questions. All right. And then the coding part, it will be testing you on all 3 of these, because it will be making sure that you have the analytics mindset, you're asking the right question, you're trying to solve for the right problem, you know of the statistical and ML model methods that are available to you that you can apply. So an example here I added, which is a very straightforward one, and can be solved using SQL or Python. So for example, given this order table, build a sequential model that shows the growth of business. Sales table is this, and then I have and basically the sales table is what I give you, and then I'm asking you to define the success metric and build a sequential analytics using any coding languages. So this is again like a very open-ended question, and as a data scientist, you can expect to get very ambiguous questions. It's up to you to figure out how to get to the bottom of it. And actually, before you start coding and before you start writing code, make sure to ask questions and figure out what you're actually trying to do. And the last one is an actual interview questions that I was asked in one of the interviews. They gave me a data frame of death in the military over the last 40 years. And then they said, perform an EDA on this data. Given that there is mean and standard deviation, explain what this tells about the data. Now, these are again like very simple concepts that like standard deviation and mean, but when you're actually applying it to the data and you're like pulling it all together, I think that's when it becomes like magical for you, because if you don't know the basics as a like the data scientist, then they're not going to ask you more complicated questions. So they will start with something simple, and then they will like ask more follow-up questions that will go into more detail and more detail. All right. What do we have next slide? So I think that is pretty much it for the interview deep dive. We'll definitely save time at the end to ask questions, and I'll let Samia walk through some of the resources.
Yeah, we quickly just want to share some of the useful resources. For example, Kaggle is a great place to find data sets and practice on actual problems. And then you have HackerRank, where you can practice your coding skills. Of course, for theoretical part, you have courses at school or online courses. Then an analytics video is a great place to find questions, especially for analytics. Then first you have top 10 data science interviews from Google or all the other big companies that you can find online as well. Glassdoor is a great place to find interview resources, especially some of you have been asking like kind of questions like phone interviews and so on. So you should be able to find them there. Stack Overflow to ask, it's an awesome community. Lead Code if you have to work on your coding, like core coding questions, algorithms. And then of course, SQL Zoo Mode and W3 School, they're learning SQL. Those are some great books if you need to do the deep dive on the SQL part. So this was a very quick overview of the resources. So I hope you were able to take a picture of the questions and the interview prep resources. We can put it again at the end. And that said, thank you very much. These are some of the ways to connect with us on the social networks. And now we will take your questions. So let's see, I have, Sundas, you want to read questions? Because I am sharing when I'm not able to see the questions coming in.
Yes, I will do that.
And let me see if I can log into Facebook. Yeah.
Okay, let me see. One thing I do want to add that Samia and we write blogs quite a bit, and this whole presentation is basically a combination of blogs that Samia and I have written on our own, and we just like married our knowledge to the two of us, and we just put it in the slide. So I would like definitely recommend to kind of like read at least the blogs that we have written. There's a lot of like information that is out there that you can benefit from. Okay, so let's start from the beginning.
So again,
so by the way, a lot of like coffee and tea person, and there are a lot of people who don't drink coffee or tea. That is amazing. I envy you if you don't drink any of it, because I am addicted.
And guys, maybe thumbs up if a lot of you have the same question. Can you thumbs up like the question that you all want to ask? So I'm looking at Facebook now. So please go ahead with the question.
Okay. Cool. So we have a question from Muhammad Bilal Jamil. Why do you think companies these days are asking 4+ years of experience in Python, SQL, and ask TensorFlow, NumPy, Pandas, as well as machine learning algorithms? All right, Samia, I'll let you take that one. So it's a hard one, though.
It's interesting. It says entry-level data analyst roles, right? First of all, like TensorFlow, it's machine learning. They're not looking for a data analyst. This must be like a startup. So if you, again, depends on which company you have applied. So they're looking for one person who knows everything, like a unicorn. Yeah. So yeah,
and that never happens. There is no way one person can know all of this. As Samia walked us through, like there are different job families under the data bucket. What this role is basically asking is like, can you do all of this for us? And so like, it's not realistic.
Yeah, especially data analysts. Like saying data analyst doesn't need TensorFlow and machine learning and all of that. So they are looking, if you look again, Sundas had shared for example, the requirements from Amazon data scientists. As you can see, they're not asking for all of this. And the big companies would look at the description, wouldn't be asking you. So this looks like coming from a startup especially. So do clarify them, ask them questions. Sometimes they do write it. So even if they say it, don't let that be hold you back from applying, or ask questions. Like, is that what they're really looking for? Do they need that? So do get back to them and ask for clarifying questions.
Okay. So we have a next question from Smriti Singh. Even at companies like Microsoft, Amazon, sometimes the job descriptions look very similar for applied scientists and data scientists.
Yes. So again, as I said, these are like very new. So companies, even actually the interesting thing is, even if you ask people at Microsoft the difference between applied scientists and data scientists, people in those roles won't be able to answer. So as I transitioned from software engineering and worked in different roles, so this was something I was really able to learn and identify like, hey, what are those skills? So create that table, but people are so confused because these are very new roles that are coming.
Yeah, I think one thing to note that if somebody is asking you to deploy your own model in the production environment, that's a clear indication that this is an applied scientist role. The way I see applied scientists versus data scientists is that applied scientists are able to do software development and are able to do like a generalist data science work. And they're basically two roles in one person. So that's how I would look at the job descriptions and see if they are asking you to deploy models in the production environment. That's your sign that this is the applied scientist.
Yeah.
Now I want to add, it's not a bad thing. Applied scientist is actually one of the highest paid job families because it's a combination of two high paying jobs. So a lot of people reach out to me that they're doing computer science and they want to quit their computer science degree and they want to do a data science degree. Don't do that. If you're able to do both of them together, like at least keep your CS major, but like add flavors of data science, add statistics courses, machine learning courses, you're going to be more valuable in the market because you are able to do two jobs.
Definitely. And again, the reason why I described those roles is this should answer your question is don't go for the title to prepare, but more like look at the requirements and prepare for the interview accordingly. So look at what they are asking for when they're saying applied scientist or data scientist. So it can vary from team to team. So,
awesome. We have another question. In terms of language, do you suggest we know both Python and R fairly well, or is it either of them being strong good enough? If I have to pick one, I would say Python. When I was working at Amazon, my team mainly worked in R, but there's a lot of limitations with R because let's say if we were build a model and then we would have to hand it over to the software development team, they have no idea what we're talking about in our code. So then they will have to there will be meetings after meetings, and then we'll have to translate into either like pseudocode or something else. So then we as a team transition from R to Python because when we're working with the development team, with software developers, it's easier for them to understand and put it in a production model. And Samia, I'll let you add your thoughts on this.
I would say that Python is the go-to language. That's you would need in most cases. R last time I used was for my master thesis, and after that I've never touched it or encountered any team that uses it either.
Yeah, I think R is good for some quick and dirty analysis because it does have a lot of cool libraries. But if you have to pick between the two, definitely pick Python.
So let's see.
So another question, what kind of coding questions can we expect in the phone interview for a data scientist, and how is this different from software engineering phone screen? So coding question I shared, those you can expect in the phone screen. And then how is it different from a software engineering? Samia, I'll let you answer that one.
Software engineering one would be very heavily focused on more detailed coding, understanding algorithms and data structures. So they would, while here it would be to test your basic coding skills, and they won't be asking you, let's say, for binary trees and the graphs and all of reversal linked list kind of questions. So those would be very heavy focused for software engineering roles. While here there would be the examples that, for example, Sundas shared here. You can see on the screen. So yeah, again, someone has a similar question, right? Is lead code not required for data science? Do they not concentrate on data structures and algorithms? No, so data structures and algorithms, again, it's not for the data scientist role, but more for if you are applying for software engineering roles or applied scientist or machine learning engineer, depending on if they require coding. Unless you're applying for a startup that they're just saying data scientist and looking for someone who knows everything. Otherwise, this is the kind of questions you should expect for coding for data science.
So somebody's asking, I have given data science interviews, and in the first round, I'm usually given a software engineering problems, data science and algorithms, time, space, complexity analysis. Is this normal? So I think this goes back to your answer, Samia, that they're probably looking for applied scientists.
Yeah, or they're looking for one person who would do everything, right?
Yeah. Unicorn. They don't exist. Okay, is it allowed to do a quick Google searches when we do not remember some specific Python functions? In a live interview, no, you cannot do that. If it's a take home, yes, you can do whatever you want. But in a live interview, on a phone screen, or in an on-site, which is even if it's online, you cannot do that.
unless they tell you, right? So if they tell you you can use the online resources, then you can do that. So
Yeah, absolutely.
in most cases, it will be so.
Okay.
So is arrays enough for data scientists? Should I know tree, linked lists, and graphs? Like most cases for data scientist role, you shouldn't need to go into trees and graphs. But again, Sundas, unless you have encountered a different experience, again, if they're looking for just a data scientist and not the person who would do software engineering work as well.
No, I've not seen it.
Yeah. Did you have to learn any graphs or trees for any of your interviews?
No, I didn't have to.
Yeah, that guys answers your question. And I didn't have to learn R. So
Awesome. How much coding part is important for data analyst entry level job? For a data analyst, I think you can get away with just knowing SQL. So just being very good at SQL, you would be golden.
yeah, I think that I'd answer like it's data analyst, like business skills, communication and presentation skills, and you could do with basic Excel, PowerPoint, Power BI, unless they are actually looking for a data scientist and calling it a data analyst.
So there's somebody else who's asking question. How to get an interview as someone who has the skills through online courses but don't have direct experience. Then what do you advise?
At least I can start with that. That, for example, the big tech companies, they wouldn't even look like their requirement is a bachelor's or a master's in computer science or related field. They wouldn't say that you have a degree in data science, and you could have done one from, let's say, Coursera, taken a deep learning specialization. So actually, I recommend Andrew NG specialization on machine learning and deep learning. That's actually recognized by the big companies. So even Google now launched the certifications, right? So at least the big companies don't look at where you did.
Yeah, but if you have taken a course, I would say like go one step further and apply your knowledge and build project portfolio from like whatever you have learned from online courses. So even though you don't have real world experience, you can still like have a leg up if you take the online courses and then like work on projects and you're able to show your knowledge through your work. And I think that's what a lot of people miss. They think that after taking an online courses, the work is done. Like, no, go one step further and actually show us what you know.
So actually, you have answered two questions in one. Good job, Sundas.
Yes, I am ahead of my time.
Yeah, how will you gain practical experience, like with gain practical exposure without experience, and also how important to have a data science portfolio. So I think this addresses it, right? So if you work on developing your portfolio, you do gain experience, and then you are able to showcase what you have learned.
Yeah, one thing I do want to add when you're showcasing your, a lot of the times people think that they build a model, and I think Samia, you touched on this. They build a model and their work is done. No, your work is not done. You actually need to show how your work actually made impact on the business and the bottom line. And if you miss that part, I am gonna think, well, I'm not gonna think, but it's going to come across that you basically learned something, but it didn't change anything for the company that you were part of or whatever project you did. Like you did it, that's fine, but like how is it gonna help me?
Yeah. So actually, I'll add one more thing on that, especially guys. Don't just clone GitHub repos from somebody else, copy paste code and see, hey, this is my portfolio. Try to really work on that and showcase what you have learned, what's your value you are adding. It's fine to clone, but then start from someone's project, but then add to it, like what have you added on top? So make it your portfolio. And they will know once you do the interview.
Yeah. And somebody is asking, a lot of top companies require you to have 3+ years of experience when you apply for data science positions. Could you give some examples of companies that hire people with 1-3 years of experience strategies to succeed as someone? So first of all, don't listen to that. If somebody says 3+ years of experience and you only have 2 months of experience, I would say go ahead and apply it. The years do not matter. It's actually what you have to offer and what you know, and how you can contribute to the company. That's more important. So don't look at just that 1 to 3 years and like hold yourself back from applying. I think that a lot of people do that, especially women. I know, like, they hold their self back. They want to have 100% of everything met before they do anything.
And good point on that sometimes people who are writing those requirements, they just write it for the sake of writing things. So do reach out. Maybe they have another role that they're looking also for a junior person, but do reach out anyway. There is no harm in trying. And you don't need, especially I know that, for example, Microsoft just opened. So guys, those of who are just fresh, they have open position for recent grads who are looking for machine learning, data science, and all the other kind of engineering roles as well. And I assume all the other companies too.
Somebody's asking how much the coding questions for data science is like software engineer interview. I think we answered this previously. It's different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
What messages would you give? Sorry, Samia, you were going to say something?
Go ahead.
Okay. So there's another question. What messages would you give to the folks over here who are learning SQL Python on their own? How should we improve our chances for interview if we don't have direct experience in data analytics, but have analysis experience with Microsoft Excel?
So I think we have kind of covered this as well, that you don't need experience, as in if you can work in developing your portfolio.
Yeah, and let's say if you only know Microsoft Excel, I would say consider data analyst or business analyst role, because for a data science role, you actually need to know more than Microsoft Excel. Knowing SQL is very, very important. As I said, like, it's a default. You need to know SQL. And then Python, like, as you go more into like more technical spaces, you have to know like more scripting languages and
I will just that not just even if you have Microsoft Excel, but if you're looking this at the Microsoft stack, Power BI is something you should know more than just Excel, because that provides you all the visualization tools and everything else. So companies use that. So to upskill in terms of your skill set would be great.
So there's an interesting question. How will you gain practical exposure in data science with no experience?
That goes back, right, when we talk about, for example, practical experience. I'll just say Kaggle, right? For example, the COVID data set is now online on Kaggle. Even companies that are working on the COVID data set, it's all available for you guys as well. So you can pick up problems, there are hackathons, and you can apply your skills there, and also do apply for internships or whichever opportunities that you get to work with nonprofits on data science projects, or AI for good, data science for good, or hackathons, these kind of things. So do try to participate and be proactive. So I think there are tons of opportunities in that. From that,
Sabah is asking, how important is it to have a data science portfolio, especially if you're returning to workforce after a gap?
I think you answered that.
Yeah, I think we answered it. You need to have a data science portfolio. You need to showcase that you actually know. It's hard enough. Like, data science is a competitive market. You need to remember that. So you need to like make sure you do the work required to kind of like showcase what skills you have. So put in the work, take online courses, do the projects, and then apply for those jobs.
I think we are on time.
I'm gonna quickly skim through the questions. I know we're a little bit over time.
I'm okay I can answer a couple of more as you have to run.
Yeah, I can stay. If you guys have more questions, like, feel free to ask in the Slack channel. We'll try our best to answer. You can also follow us on the socials and ask us questions there as well. We'll be happy to answer as well.
Yeah. Any other question that you see, Sundas, right now? I'm just scrolling quickly to the Facebook chat.
I just wanted to say thank you guys for so much interest. I think you guys have blown away in that comment section. So I'm just looking through the comment section, and you guys did an awesome job. So I'm just gonna give a clap to all of you.
I will read them afterwards. I'm straight. I wasn't able to see anything. So yeah, thank you. Thank you guys.
Yeah, I think a lot of these questions we have previously answered. I do see some additional questions that I think we can move to Slack for the sake of time. What do you think, Samia?
Yeah, and guys, please do, if you have a question Slack and someone asks and you have the same question, just give it a thumbs up so that we know like what is that most of you want to ask. Like for example, we got so many on the portfolio right now, so similarly, just try to group and make it easy. It would
Yeah.
be easy.
And also connect with the people who you see on the chat, because I'm sure there's a term called peer mentoring. So
Yeah.
you can learn a lot from us, but you can also learn a lot from each other. So make sure like you're connecting with each other and like staying in touch after get hired, because I'm sure there's a lot of knowledge that you can share with each other and learn from each other.
Actually, I would add, like many of you were saying, like 3 years, 4 years of experience. So if you keep in touch and someone manages to find it, you can just ask, hey, how did you do it? Like, how did you get around with it? So please just talk to each other as well. Like if you have the same questions. And this is like, if it was a real event, you would have been able to have the chit chat after the talk. So try to think that it's like in person as well and do the same.
Awesome. We will post. Somebody's asking for the Slack channel. Yes, after this talk is over, I'll respond in the comment and add the snack. Not snack. I'm hungry, but Slack channel. But I just wanted to say thank you so much for joining today. I hope this was useful. And if for those of you who are doing mock interviews after this session, make sure to apply the skills that you learned in this session and the yesterday's sessions. And feel free to reach out on Slack or other social channels if you have more questions.
Best of luck, guys. Best of luck with your journey ahead. And thank you so much for being a great audience. And yes, bye.
Bye.
Thank you.